suis LOGIX, j'aime beaucoup les bazaroids. Alors, bienvenue dans le MVC.
Hey Mr. LOGIX, I hope you're doing well. You know, my community has been asking for this interview for a long time, and here you are. I'm so happy, so thank you very much and welcome to my talk show called The Bazaroid.
Thank you very much, Very happy to be here. Heard a lot of things, obviously. Quite a legend, especially in the French scene, so very happy to be here.
Really? You've heard about me?
I mean, of course. I mean, obviously, I've had a couple of Frenchies quite next to me on the team already.
Yeah.
They couldn't stop talking about you at all, but I mean, overall, obviously, part of a European gang, we've definitely heard about you, and always looking forward to it.
Whoa. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I get that all the money I give to Albless to make some advertising for me is finally working.
Yeah, he definitely does his part.
So LOGIX, for reasons of comfort, we will do the interview in English, but since you also speak French, can you quickly introduce yourself in French?
Yeah, of course. Salut, je suis LOGIX, je suis belge et j'ai 23 ans. Je commence ma 3e année de jeu à Toronto. Je vais faire ces entretiens en anglais car il est plus facile pour moi de répondre aux questions en détail. Mon français est très sous-utilisé, mais à l'avenir, je promets de faire une interview en français complet.
Très bien, très bien.
Merci.
Tu parlais français un petit peu avec Albless, Féfé, zYKK ou Lilbow ou pas du tout?
Pas du tout, parce que la communication sur la team, l'équipe est parfait en anglais. So, yeah. I mean, most of the time, when they spoke French, I was able to pick up on it, and they noticed that. It was always like very weird interactions. Like we were doing a barbecue with the team, and he was talking French, and he would ask to, like, the cork screwdriver for like a bottle of wine. They were asking for it, and I was in the middle of a conversation, and they were talking to each other, but they didn't know how to say it in English, so they said it in French. And I'm like, oh, here you go, here's the screwdriver. So I definitely pick up on it, but I mean, as I said, like I'm more comfortable speaking in English, especially because my French is like, I got it taught in school, but I don't really have any uses for it in daily life. So it's like slumbers off, a little bit, but it's definitely something I wish I was better at.
Yeah, don't worry, we're gonna talk in English. Where are you from in Belgium?
I'm from Antwerp, so Anvers, the northern part of Belgium. So both my parents are Dutch.
And they are not used to speak French there in Anvers?
No, not at all. I mean, definitely part of their work requires them to speak French, but I'd say like 75% of their work speaks Dutch, and then a little bit of English, and then a little bit of French. But majority of the time, we just, we're mostly fine with just speaking Dutch.
So LOGIX, you're the second Belgian player that I receive here. The first one was Spree, former player of Houston Outlaws, but the most famous Belgium and the only one remaining in OWL today is you. First of all, did you speak with Spree? He wasn't your friend in OWL or not at all?
We definitely kept in contact. I mean, obviously, it was kind of special being the two Belgian people in the Overwatch League. So that's definitely something that connected us. But I'm more of a person that keeps with my team, I'd say. So we definitely spoke on occasion, especially when he obviously decided to retire from Overwatch League. Yeah. I messaged him. But overall, we had that connecting us. I wasn't necessarily super close with Spree, but obviously it was always very proud to have a fellow Belgian with me in the Overwatch League. Being the last one standing is not something I actively think about too much. Like, I don't necessarily think about it as a nationality that much. Obviously, I'm proud because sometimes I have fans telling me, you're an inspiration. And in that regard, it's kind of silly being like such a little country and still having people that look up to me. It's really cool to see. But in general, I'm just, I'm proud to be European and proud to represent the region.
Yeah, such as Neptuno, he told us the same in the last interview when I asked him, do you feel big responsibilities to be the only Spanish player remaining in the OWL? And he said, I'm feeling more than European player than Spanish player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's kind of weird. I think if you ask most Belgian people if they feel like they're more Belgian or European, I think more often than not you'll find out that they feel more European, which is kind of a weird thing, honestly. I never really thought too much about it, but I mean, I personally feel that way as well. Obviously, I'm proud to be Belgian, but I think I would say I'm more proud being European, if that makes sense. Like that's a bigger part of me than just specifically being Belgian.
Of course, and LOGIX, we know you well in France because we like Belgium's people, and even more when we beat them in football.
Here we go. Here we go. We don't have to have this conversation. It happens, We'll come back.
Are you a football fan?
I don't really follow any like national leagues throughout the year. Obviously, World Cup, Belgium Red Devils. It's a national tradition. Obviously, I do keep track there, yeah.
Okay, and LOGIX, I'm just kidding with you, but we know you well, especially because here we follow a lot of French people in OWL and in Toronto Defiant. Last season, there were 4 of them, Albless, Féfé, Lilbow, and zYKK. Can you tell us a word about each of them? We're going to do this in alphabetical order, so Albless first. What can you tell us about him, about your relationship?
So obviously, Albless came in as our general manager. Honestly, the first word that comes to mind when I think of Albless is just joyful, like energetic, just a guy that's bouncing around left, right. Someone who was always able to cheer up the team. Obviously we had a pretty rough season, but someone who was able to maintain like that smile on his face, like kept the mood up for the team. Someone who's like, I'd say very crucial for a team, As a player, especially when you have a manager that goes out of his way to do everything he can to take that responsibility of you, so I can just prepare for my game. Just that in combination with his attitude was just like absolutely magical to have on our team.
Yeah, that's the Albless we know as well in the French casting crew. And Albless told me that you're an amazing player to have in a team because you have experience, you have very good contact as well with your teammates. And he said as well that you're kind of a landmark for every Western player as for Korean players.
Yeah, I definitely try and do my best to connect with everyone, obviously. Obviously, I have an easier time connecting to Western players because overall the culture is more like what I grew up with, what I just live on a daily basis. But I definitely do think it's, super important to try and like form that bridge. Obviously, the cultures are different. There's like certain differences that are just from like, from birth that are just different. But if you end up working with each other for more than 10 hours a day, then, you're going to make the best of it. You're going to make, those guys are there to win. You're there to win. But at the same time, you're going to try to have fun. You crack jokes with them. You just have fun with them. And that's the best team environment to have.
And were you surprised when Albless kind of not left the team, but was released by Toronto Defiant? Surprised, maybe sad?
It was a mix of emotions because as far as I was aware, they were in talks. And then all of a sudden, I get a message from Albless like, hey, my contract's not getting extended. That was definitely a bit of a shock to me. Obviously, I don't know the entire story, I'd say. Obviously, that's between Albless and Toronto Defiant themselves. But I definitely value him as a manager. It's not like I wouldn't want to have him. Obviously, Toronto had different ideas about that. So that's kind of the way things went there.
Now, we can talk about Féfé. Féfé was a Toronto head coach. What can you tell us about Féfé?
Féfé. Obviously, I think the situation with Féfé was honestly very weird because I have so much respect for him as a coach. He came into the team. I had never really heard much about him. I heard from a lot of EU players that he was very highly regarded. So obviously, when someone like that joins your team, you're excited. And it really showed, like, the moment I started our bootcamp in Korea, the way he explained the game and essentially the part of how he thought of teamwork and what a team really was an eye-opener. Like, he obviously had his background in the national team for France, for basketball, and just in general, like, his coaching background really gave, like, a good insight in what it actually was like to be a team player, I always consider myself who's pretty careless, who's pretty selfless. I always try and focus myself more on the team. And he definitely taught me a lot in that regard where, obviously the saying, there's no I in team. He really made me like realize that more so than anyone else. He was a very big leading force when there had to be, like when there were shots to be called, Féfé was always there. And I think that was most notable when we went to LAN events, for anyone that doesn't know, Féfé does incredible speeches. Before games. I'm not sure if you could see that in some of the videos that Defiant released, but it was always like super motivational, super supportive of everyone. If anyone had an issue, we could be able to talk to him. I know some players had like issues. He could literally spent hours talking with them. So honestly, someone that is very caring for the players and that was so driven to help us become like the best players we could be. I think one of the reasons why it wasn't as successful near the end was obviously because of COVID. A lot of events weren't happening. And I think as a coach, what Féfé brings to the team, I do think he's smart at Overwatch, but I think his biggest strength was that leadership figure and being able to motivate people with everyone in their apartment. That obviously kind of fell away, that kind of fell through. So I was really sad when he departed the team, but I also kind of understood where it came from, where I think his biggest strength as a head coach wasn't being used because of the situation in the world.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised because you said that you've never heard about Féfé before he joined the team. You've never heard about Eagle Gaming, the best team in the world?
No,
LOGIX?
okay, of course I've heard about Eagle Gaming, but I mean in the sense that I guess I was so busy with Overwatch League, a lot of the time you don't hear that much about coaches in general, I think. Obviously that was not meant bad about Féfé, of course. Of course everyone knows about Eagle Gaming. Might be the most legendary team in Overwatch history. No, yeah, it was just personally, I guess in terms of Overwatch League, I guess there wasn't much talk about him. And then when you obviously talk more to EU players, obviously he's like super highly regarded, So that's what I meant.
Now we can talk about Lilbow, which says also a lot of good things about you.
Yeah, Lil B. Obviously, he came into the team as an assistant coach. Obviously, transitioning from a player to a coaching position for his first year under Féfé. I think overall, he was comfortable being an assistant coach at first. I think he's one of the smartest people in terms of how much he thinks about the game and the way he thinks about the game. Our situation was kind of weird with Féfé leaving because he was basically forced to transition into a head coach position, which was kind of like too much on his plate at the time because it's his first year of coaching. Suddenly he has to lead an entire team. I think in terms of his personality, I wouldn't describe Lilbow as like a natural leader. And that's what we really desperately needed as a team. So it was like he has to take on the strategic part of the team where obviously he had to make strategies, but at the same time he gets like thrown such a big like bag of emotions and leadership that he has to suddenly take over. And I think that was honestly a little too much for Lilbow. I don't think that's something the team blamed him for, obviously. I think everyone was very aware of what was going on, and we were kind of just trying to go with the punches. Honestly, I overall I think Lilbow did a fantastic job, but I do think it showed in our team that needed someone else beside him that could have taken that pressure off him. But I think for the circumstances that were happening, I think Lilbow honestly did a fantastic job.
Yeah, Lilbow is a mastermind.
Yeah, absolutely.
A big brain. And Lilbow told me that in Overwatch, you're a big fan of one of his favorite strategy, the Lucio brick composition. Can you tell us a bit more about that, LOGIX?
Okay, so throughout this season, obviously there's a lot of different compositions that are being played in scrims of different regions of contenders that people look at. And for some reason, Lilbow had the idea to play Lucio Brig, but it is so utterly trash. We actually had a very heated conversation about this because he was so like he believed in this so much that he was willing to spend an entire screen playing it. And I literally told him to his face, I am not playing if that's what we're playing. Like it's just not a good comp. Like overall, the way it works with other team composition, it just gets either rolled over or it gets poked out. There's just like, it's too much of an in-between. I just don't see it being a good comp. And he was very, very, very driven to make us play that comp.
And finally, zYKK, the last French who arrived during the season, who was not retained by Toronto Defiant and who has since moved to Valorant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, correct. Obviously, zYKK coming in later through the season. Obviously, we had some issues that need to be filled. I think zYKK was a great addition to the team. Very young player, European player. Always happy to see those. I'd say mechanically, one of the better contenders players that was able to be picked up at the time. I do think in terms of game sense, he had a lot to learn. I generally think that the level of game sense between contenders and Overwatch League is pretty big. But I do think with the coaching that we had in terms of strategy, we were capable. I do think that coming in later into the Overwatch League season, being like we were already behind as a team compared to other teams, and then being a new player in Overwatch League being thrown into the mix, I do think unless you have the proper coaching around you, it's hard to keep up. Because it is a very brutal like job, right? Obviously, he gets thrown into the mix, is suddenly needed to perform. He suddenly has to do our strategies. He suddenly has to play different heroes that he's maybe not comfortable on. Again, I think
as well from
yeah,
France.
playing with Ping as well from EU. Obviously, in terms of visas, that was like an issue. Honestly, I totally forgot about that. We obviously had players that were unable to come to Toronto because they're signed halfway through the season. The whole world is crashing down because of COVID. Like visas are being delayed or straight up just not happening. There's a lot of circumstances that were not playing into his favor. It's really sad to think about that, especially because you see a player like that retire, so young, so talented, never being able to play with like the optimal circumstances in Overwatch League is like you'll never know how good he would have done, I guess is the way to think about it. I mean, obviously he made the choice to go to Valorant, which obviously best of luck for him. You know? I think his aim is really insane, so I have no doubt that he's going to do well there.
Yeah, I hope so as well, because he deserves better. That's an amazing player and also an amazing person. He's so kind.
Yeah, absolutely. He's, I'd say it's honestly like, it took him a while to get into the group, I think, because he's overall like, I wouldn't call him shy, but I think he like lays back a little bit. And then the moment we were like, you know, getting to play with him for a couple of weeks, he like really integrated well into the group, super positive guy. Always looking for like solutions if something went wrong. Wasn't really the type of person to ever blame someone. It was like, even if something happened that was like a stupid mistake by someone, he would always like try and be like, all right, you know, shit happens. It's okay. We'll just go next. Like really an attitude that you can look up to as any player, honestly.
Yeah, we love zYKK as well. Now, LOGIX, if you want, we can talk a bit about last season. How do you judge the last season of Toronto and your last season as well with the team?
Last season, how would I? So if I would compare my expectations versus the reality of what it actually turned out to be, I think my expectations for the team, with the roster we had, I really think we were very capable of being at least a top 8 team, getting to playoffs. I'm not entirely sure what I had hoped for, how we do in playoffs. I think we would have done pretty well early on in playoffs, and then maybe later on, like maybe top 5, 6 drop out. Obviously, the reality was slightly different. I think on paper, we had players that were very good. I think every team obviously had to deal with COVID in their own regard. But I think for us, losing out on Féfé, which was like a really big hit for us. Quelques retiring, Cruz coming into the team, basically losing our main support, our head coach, COVID happening. I think we were a team that was very reliant on each other. Like throughout scrims, obviously we were playing at the practice facility, just being able to see each other's emotions, hanging out during after scrims, you know, after hours, just playing together. That was like a really big drive for us as a team. So I think that out of all the teams that maybe COVID hit, I felt like we definitely felt it as some of the most. There's some reasoning behind, I think, why we did not that good. I also think individual players were struggling quite hard in terms of keeping their mental and emotions up.
Yeah, and the way the team was built as well, the hero pool changed a lot of things. Because you were
yeah, for sure.
Such a small roster.
Yeah, so obviously we decided with 8 players from the get-go. That was the idea that Féfé had. Obviously have like a very stagnant main tank, off tank support and flex support. And then we had 3 DPS players. And we obviously were looking to interchange that. Obviously me, Surfer, me being the main hit scan player, Surfer being a more flexible player, being able to play both hit scans and projectiles, and agility is mainly focused on the projectiles. So I think 2-2-2 being like such an important factor. Obviously the metas were not known by then, but that was definitely like a big wrench, I guess, being thrown at us.
And what about you?
For me, last season was kind of tough, honestly, thinking back on it. I think the way I think about playing in Overwatch League, for me, putting an entire week of practice was always the payoff of playing in an official game on stage, which kind of comes back to how COVID like kind of threw that over. Like the first few homestands were such an amazing feeling, being able to go to Washington, being able to go to different places, go to New York for the opening weekend. Like I just think back on hitting that shot on Exio on Havana, just the crowd's reaction, like the dopamine going through your body, just the excitement you get from playing in front of a crowd is like, it's like a very big payoff, honestly. It's kind of addicting to a sense. That being taken away for good reasons, obviously. Obviously, no one wants to risk getting infected. I think the league reacted to COVID, honestly, really well. But it is a bit sad as a player to lose that, I guess, excitement factor that is like so desirable.
Was it harder for you in the game or outside of the game?
I'd say more so for myself, not so much in game. I mean, when I'm on stage, I'm able to pretty much zone in on the game. So like throughout the game, the crowd is not that noticeable, but I think it's those key clutch moments where the crowd becomes like a big factor that I definitely miss. Just like the way your body reacts to that, the way, just the excitement. Yeah, it's like it's hard to describe. It's like a magical feeling almost.
Yeah, I hope it will be back in 2021, not at the beginning of the season, but maybe later. John Spector told us about that maybe they will be live event. So finger crossed. And 2021 will be the year of change for Toronto Defiant, because there are changes in staff, there are changes of players, no more Frenchie, no more Canadians, many Korean players. You are one of the only survivors with Beast.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
Correct. So, huge changes for us this year. Obviously, dropping majority of our roster, majority of our staff. Definitely a shock to me as well as other people.
You didn't expect that at all?
I expected, obvious, for us to make some major changes. Obviously, the way people were behaving near the end of the season, I knew people weren't as motivated. People didn't live up to expectations. So, I think if you have such a bad season of Overwatch League, there's bound to be changes in some regard, right? Whether that be staff or players. I think for us, obviously, the changes we made were very drastic. Basically, only keeping me and Beast is a very big change for a roster. I'm not necessarily opposed to going anyway. I think I was definitely the first person to be re-signed on the roster.
Yeah.
Which
this is proof of
to
confidence.
me, it's definitely proof of confidence, and it also shows that the org believes in me, and that obviously gives me a lot of confidence back to them. Obviously I'm signed to a 2+1. That really makes my mark, I guess, into the Toronto Defiant organization. It also shows me that they're serious about this, that they value my input, and I do think that showcased throughout the roster building, in a sense, mostly in terms of what head coaches we were looking at. Obviously, I was signed before any of the coaches being signed. So I was basically in order that we signed people. I was the first one to be signed. Then we signed KDG. Then we signed Beast. And then we signed everyone else after they went through trials and whatnot. So I wouldn't say I had like the final say or anything like that in terms of coaches, but Toronto definitely reached out to me. We're like, hey, we're doing interviews with XYZ. What do you think about them? What can you tell us about them? And I was very big favorite for KDG. I've got friends from Philadelphia Fusion. Obviously, I've heard a lot of great things about KDG himself. I mean, I respect him personally a lot. I have also heard that he's a very strict coach, which is something that I personally look for in a coach. Obviously, that might not always bode well with everyone, I think. Maybe not everyone's good to deal with authority. But I do think that from every team I've been on, the coaches that have been very authoritative, very strict, very straight to the point, have always worked well. So for me personally, out of the choices we had, KDG was like a clear favorite, and that's where I definitely like pushed the direction forward, and I'm very happy that we ended up getting KDG. As far as my other teammates go, Beast, I actually didn't know was getting re-signed. He was kind of out of the blue. I do think Beast is a phenomenal player that was undervalued last season. I do think we had issues as a team. I don't necessarily think they lied within the main tank position. So I am very happy that he is getting another chance with Toronto. We'll obviously have to see that the way throughout the season, how we're going to utilize that. But overall, I'm happy with the direction we're heading.
When you got re-signed by the team LOGIX, were you aware that they're going to turn into like a lot of Korean player?
Well, obviously, with having me on the roster, a full Korean team is already basically excluded, right? One of my biggest questions for when we were interviewing KDG was obviously he was very open about wanting to pick up newer Korean players and having him be under him, having his philosophy coached upon them, right? Kind of molding them into the players that he wants them to be. And my first question for him was, okay, that's fine with me. You can, obviously, I don't care how many Koreans I have on the roster. I don't care how many Europeans, whatever. I just wanted to know how he felt like integrating me into the roster. He gave a very clear explanation to me. And
what
from
did
that
he tell
point
you
onwards,
to convince you?
I mean, he believes in my ability as a hitscan player, and he does believe that I have the ability to form around those teammates. So I mean, that just tells me that obviously for this season we will field whatever player is the best. I don't really have to doubt at any given point that we're fielding the Koreans because it's easier to communicate. I have that vote of confidence from KDG, and I will just use that as a way to put my best foot forward this season. He obviously knew from the beginning that I was going to be part of the roster. I do think we obviously have Hisu signed. We'll end up seeing what the meta ends up being, whether it's going to be me Hisu, me Nice, Hisu Nice. It's kind of going to be depending on who's a better player and depending on the meta.
Do you know in which language you're going to communicate?
So,
is it going to be English
obviously,
or a mixed Korean-English?
Yeah, so maybe interesting enough, the Koreans have been scrimming in Korea since the start of January. Obviously, they're unable to get to Toronto just yet because their visas were being processed. Obviously, it'd be taking a longer time. But they have already been practicing for, I guess it's February 7th right now. So for a little over a month, the team is communicating in English, even though they're playing with Koreans, because we are definitely trying to set a standard for the entire team that if me and Beast need to be integrated, there's not going to be an issue of a language barrier. Obviously, there are some players that have previously played on English-speaking rosters, mostly thinking about Nice, Sado, Isu, being Philadelphia Fusion and Fusion University. And then we have a mix of new Korean players that don't have any experience playing on English-speaking teams. We sell Ashtak, Ansun J. So there's obviously, there's like a learning curve to be had, but I know for a fact that the guys are giving their best, and that's what counts to me.
Yeah, and it's good to know that because they're practicing right now all together, but you're not part of the scrim, if I hear well. Beast neither. So it's going to be easier for you and Beast to integrate well when they will be back in Toronto and you will start screaming if you're all talking the same language.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And you told me that you're very excited to work with KDG. Have you already worked with the Korean coaching staff or not?
So for season 2, obviously I was only part of Toronto Defiant for a little bit, but was obviously under Bishop as well as Moby Dick near the end. Bishop obviously ended up leaving the organization, but I was for a short while under Moby Dick, obviously transitioning into a Philadelphia Fusion coach afterwards. So I have experience being under Korean coaches. Definitely like a different philosophy, and they definitely have a different hierarchy, where I do think that a lot of the time the coach has the final say, where I think typically for me, the way I think about it, if you're a Western player under a Western coach, when the coach explains you something, a lot of Western players will ask like the why do we do this? How do we do this? When do we do this? Like they ask a lot more questions, questioning the strategy that they lay out. And I think I feel with a lot more Korean players and their coaches, coach says something and the players will just say, okay, like we'll do this. There's a lot less questioning. There's a lot more authority and I guess a hierarchy to the person above you says this, you will just do it without questioning it. The coach tells you to do something dumb, maybe because he just wants to see something, right? You just do it, you don't question it. Obviously, there's like some silly comps that we've run in practice just because KDG wants to see, what's good, what works, things like that.
I remember the French player from Paris Eternal, when they started to work with the Korean coaching staff, they said to me that they rediscovered the game. They really learned how to play the game. Was it the same for you?
I think it'll mostly depend on this season, I'd say. I mean, Moby was definitely an eye-opener. He definitely thought different about the game than any other coach I've had, and he was very informative as to how he thought about the game. He definitely made me, I think at the time, I don't remember the meta, but for the meta, he was really good at explaining the meta and basically the decision between why things were good, unlike, I guess, anything I've been explained before. So yeah, I mean, I definitely agree that it was eye-opening in that sense.
Are you still in contact with KDG? Because he is working right now in Korea with the Korean player, but does he send you some guideline, work stuff or things like this?
So right now, the system is, we had basically a couple of interviews with me and Beast throughout 2 weeks of them being streaming in Korea, where he would go over the same.
About your gameplay or about the one?
About the team's gameplay.
Okay.
Obviously, I mean, I'm mostly just playing ranked, filling my time. That's the best competition I'm currently getting. But obviously, going over the team, looking at VODs, explaining what the guys are doing, what they're doing wrong, asking our feedback on the things that are happening, how we would play certain situations, what's the right play, things like that. Basically, just teaching us the game IQ, teaching us the right decisions to make. Obviously, not based on our gameplay necessarily, but just the team in general. That also gives us an idea how the team is doing, how the team is playing, things that we need to look for, so things like that. So we're obviously not playing right now, but we're still getting the feedback and the know-how about the current meta, I suppose.
And how do you feel about that? I mean, when you know that the rest of the team is already practicing and that you have to play ranked.
It's definitely been frustrating. Obviously, knowing that the season is approaching and not being able to have the players here quite yet is definitely an annoying feeling. I mean, obviously, as a competitive player, I want to play with my team. You know, I'd like to play every single scrim if I could right now. Sadly, that's just not a reality, and kind of just have to lay down with that, do my best, you know. But I mean, I'm very excited for the guys to get here. They fly out, I think, next week, maybe a little bit over a week. Then
nice.
they obviously have to quarantine for 2 weeks, and then afterwards you can just go to the practice facility and start giving it our all for the upcoming season.
I've heard that you love soju or soyu. I don't know how you.
Soju, yeah.
Soju, that's an alcohol from Korea. You're kind of a soju master, and do you think that it can help you to develop a good relationship with the Koreans on the team?
Yeah, I suppose so. Why not? Obviously, going out to eat with the team is always like a super good social gathering. But definitely don't mind a couple of drinks with the team. Definitely loosen up some people and get people talking. It's always a good time.
When you went in Korea last season for the boot camp with Toronto Defiant, did you had a good time? I mean, that was the first time you went there in Korea?
Yeah, it was the first time in Korea. I had an absolutely amazing time. It was a lot of fun. I absolutely loved the culture. I mean, it was always fun going out with team dinners as well. It was very different because obviously most of the time we see the Korean players in a Western culture. Sometimes it's hard to like stand still and think about it. They fly out to a whole different continent in the world, and they basically have like a whole different culture laid out in front of them. And I think often we don't really think about that. Obviously, going to Korea was like, it was kind of like an eye-opener, I suppose, in a sense. Obviously, we were only there for a month, but everything was different. It was fun to see the Koreans in their, I guess, more comfortable space. Seeing them walk around the city, guiding us, you know. I don't know, just things like that was a fun little thing to see, and it was fun to see them more in their comfort zone, and I guess seeing us out of our comfort zone. It was a lot of fun.
And right now they're boot camping in Korea, or they're all in their
No,
own
they're
place?
playing from home, yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's so unlucky, this COVID situation.
Yeah, it's definitely not ideal the way things are, but obviously every team has to deal with this. Everyone's kind of just doing the best they can, I think.
So you told a bit about KDG and what you expect from the coach, but to give your best LOGIX, what do you need in the team, and what do you expect from the structure, from the coaching staff?
What do I expect? I think from a coaching staff, what I mostly require is the guidance and the understanding of what we do. That's obviously like pretty broad, but I basically want my coach to lay out a plan for me that I can just execute, and I have absolutely no doubt that KDG will do that, obviously. As I said, I'm not currently in the scrims, but the things that he has explained to us are very crystal clear to me. I like the direction that he thinks, I like the direction where the team is heading in terms of play style, in terms of how he thinks the game should be played. So I'm very excited to, I guess, get going myself. I haven't scrimmed in about 6 months, so I have no doubt that I'm going to int my face off for the first week. But overall, I think a coach that is just that lays it out straight, that doesn't really mess around, that doesn't give too much room for interpretation, that basically tells you to do X, Y. I can just do that. If I did something wrong, he can openly talk to me about it. I can explain to him why I did something, why I couldn't do something, and basically has an open ear to that. And in terms of players, I think what I expect from players is mostly what I expect from myself. I think it's important that you mirror those expectations. Obviously, when I go into a scrim, I want everybody to give their hardest, like try their hardest, leave everything out there. Obviously, it's not a match, but there's players that have a very hard time getting into the same mindset. And I do think the way you play in a match should be mirrored as much as possible in a scrim. There's certain factors that you can't copy. You know, there's adrenaline. I expect intensity. I expect people to try. I expect people to be understanding, and I expect everyone just to give their hardest and their best.
And what about the structure? Because it's very important. I mean, I talked with different players from different teams, and they don't really have the same means to work well. That's not the same in Philly Fusion than in Paris Eternal this season, for example.
Yeah. I feel like it's a hard question for me to answer before the season really starts. Because I don't really...
Being all together, for example, is that something crucial for you?
Yeah, of course. But I mean, that's like a standard to me. I suppose... Maybe I've been lucky in that regard, obviously. But I do think the remarks that I've needed for every team have always been matched. I'm always able to have a very open conversation. I think there's obviously a reason that I've chosen to stay with Toronto, where I think from the ground up they have it very well with players. Obviously, we have our apartments in the middle of Toronto. They take care of all our meals. We're able to go to a brand new practice facility where we have a streaming room if people want to use it. A full setup where we obviously have all our players in one room, coaches in the other room, photo review room ready where needed. We have allocated times where if we are able to relax, if you need therapy, this season especially, there's going to be more focus on the physical as well as mental well-being for the players. There's a corner in our office that's going to be transitioned into some sort of like gym, because obviously the gyms in Toronto right now are closed. So in terms of structure that I expect, I suppose, I just want everyone to be together under one roof where we're able to be together and spend time with each other, where we don't really have to worry about other things outside, where if we reach out to our GM about anything related to banks or phone numbers or anything like that, things are sorted for us.
That's a good answer, honestly. Thank you.
Fair enough, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Now, can we talk a bit about, the team for 2021 season? You told us you haven't played with them yet, but have you participated to the trials? Did you watch it? What can you tell us about Toronto's new recruits? Sado, Michel, Asunjay, Astak, Isu, Neist.
So as far as trials, obviously we did trials for Europe, America, as well as Korea. As far as my participation in trial, there wasn't any plans. As far as things were planned out, I was going to get re-signed to Toronto regardless, if everything went accordingly. I was one of the only players that didn't have to do a trial, because Toronto was kind of set on having me. And then the old roster, every one of those players got a chance to trial. They went through different stages depending on the feedback they got or whatnot. And then we kind of picked up KDG. I think we were near the end of our trials for Europe and America. I'm not entirely sure what his thought process was, but he at the same time started with trials in Korea. I honestly didn't follow those trials that much, so that's where I kind of just passed it on to KDG. Obviously, I had my feedback on the American and Western trials. I ended up participating in some of them because there was a lack of people showing up for whatever reason. They were not very good about that. But I'd say that I like where we're headed as a team. Obviously, most of my trust of the new players that I've not played with or haven't seen in Overwatch League, it's kind of just my trust in KDG as a coach. Obviously, we have seen Sado and Hisu playing really well for Philadelphia Fusion. Michel being a sub off tank for Soul Dynasty hasn't seen much play.
Yeah,
but
it's
I do
kind of
think
weird, by the way.
Yeah, Michel not seeing that much playtime, I do think was a bit odd, but I do think whenever he did have playtime, always seemed like a very competent, very good main tank, off tank, sorry.
For sure.
So obviously, I think that was a very big pickup for us. Maybe a little bit of a dark horse coming into the season, I'd even say. And as far as the people we picked up from Korean contenders, that's kind of where I just, I would kind of just look at KDG and say, I think he's a terrific coach, and I trust his judgment on those players.
But from what you've watched on the screen, have you been impressed by one of them?
I mean, each individually. I think I kind of didn't have any expectations going into scrims. People haven't scrimmed for months. It's a brand new team, brand new set of personalities. I think it's always I'm kind of always the kind of person that waits it out a bit, because I think if last season taught me anything, it's like even if you're on paper, you have the players that seemingly would fit well together. That might not always be the case, but we'll obviously have to see how I integrate to the team as well as Beast. But I mean, I think it'll be easier to ask me that question halfway through the season or even near the end.
Yeah, but sometimes on a POV or something, you're just like, wow, this guy is a beast. I mean, he's a monster.
All of them.
So strong.
All of them.
All of them.
All of them. Yeah.
Good answer. And do you feel that Toronto will be stronger in 2021 than in 2020?
Yeah, definitely. I'm very confident in saying that. I think last year we had some major flaws. I think a lot of people got demotivated pretty quickly. I don't expect that to happen with KDG. I think there's a very big driving force that will keep people motivated. And I think overall, we have a good mix of veteran players as well as young talent. I think often young talent is very eager to perform, very positive, very kind of energetic in that regard. And then myself, as well as obviously other experienced Overwatch League players, will obviously be able to help them guide into becoming the best player they can be.
You said quite before that Beast deserve a new chance for next season. Do you think that it can be the real surprise in Toronto in 2021, or maybe another player?
I mean, in terms of Beast, I really think that he's an absolutely nuts main tank, and I think at times it's hard to see that through playing on a bad team. I think last year I would consider as a bad team. And I don't think he really got to showcase how good he actually is. You only get a certain amount of chances, so this year he will definitely have to show to the world that he actually is that good of a main tank, right? I personally put my trust in him. As far as I think for our players go, I think Nice will definitely be a person that people should keep their eye out on. I think obviously he's a very notable player throughout his career already. Obviously his first time being in the Overwatch League, being old enough now. It's going to be an interesting year for him. But definitely keep your eyes peeled for him.
All right, and now maybe we can talk a bit about your first season LOGIX with Florida Mayhem. What memories do you have from that experience in 2018?
I have a lot of losses marked in my eyes. No, obviously, I don't want to go down the negative road. I think entering Overwatch League was super hype. Obviously, we were one of the very few full teams that were able to join the Overwatch League, transitioning from Misfits into Florida Mayhem. Obviously, we ended up missing some parts where I think we were lackluster, but I will always take home the memories of that was probably the team that I was closest with throughout my entire career. It really did feel like we were like a family. I think that was also one of the big reasons as to why we were able to keep going throughout that season. Obviously, having a rough season, being able to still be joyful, still be content with each other, and still be able to back each other up was definitely one of the key factors for the few wins we did get.
I remember, by the way, your entries in the Blizzard Arena as well.
Yeah, those entries, those are fun memories. Even though I was never a fan of them, but thinking back on it now, those were some really hype and really fun moments. Just being able to bring something to the table that was different than other teams. People really thought we really thought about it. We really thought it out that much. Pretty much every time before stage, it was mostly swoosh that came up with like silly or dumb ideas. Like, yo, let's do this, guys. Let's just make people smile, go out there, play our game, and have some fun with it. But those were definitely like, they were definitely iconic, and they were a lot of fun.
And talking about 2018, OWL was on stage. In 2020, it was mostly online. So you told us that you're missing it a lot, LOGIX, the scene, the crowd as well. Is that something which transcends you to be in front of the crowd? Because some people, they can be, you know, disturbed by the crowd and feeling more pressure.
No, it definitely never added pressure to me. There was, at some point, there was a narrative that I got nervous in front of stage. But I mean, honestly speaking, I've always been the kind of person that is able to zone out pretty easily. The moment I do get on stage, I put on my headset, I'm able to focus very much without any issue on the game. Obviously, there's the moments where something really hype happens and the microphone picks it up. But I'd say for the most part, I don't get affected by it that much. But obviously, there's nothing quite like mimicking the energy of a crowd, chanting, like stomping their feet on the ground. I just think back on any of the home stunts we attended in 2020, and playing from your bedroom is definitely a different vibe.
How do you do to still get motivated? I mean, because you said it's tough, it's different. When you're practicing from your room, you're playing official from your room, that's not the same.
Yeah. It definitely isn't the same. It's kind of just, I suppose it's a mindset thing, you know, at the end of the day, you're still playing that competitive game. There's obviously the hype factor that you're missing. I wouldn't say I have too much of an issue with it. At the end of the day, I'm a competitive person. The most important thing happening at that time is not playing on stage, but winning the game at hand. But it's definitely a noticeable difference. It's kind of just, you know, telling myself that that's the reality of the situation. Obviously, I hope for change, but that change will have to come in due time.
And what do you do to recharge the battery? Because you're not playing Overwatch 24/7, right?
No, definitely not. I've definitely taken a step back on my off days, where we obviously play for 6 out of 7 days. Very normal schedule in the Overwatch League. 6 out of 7 days, I am busy with Overwatch for 10 to 12 hours, where it'd be reviewing games, playing games, thinking about the game with the team. So those days are very long and draining, where to a point where throughout the 3 years, I've learned for myself that on my off day, I really need that time for myself to recharge and really unplug. Not really interact with my team as much. Really take that time for myself. Most of the time, I end up playing Overwatch, but not necessarily in the same mindset and focus as you would in a scrim. Just really take a step back and, you know, put the week that you just went through your brain and trying to like locate everything, you know. Point for yourself out what went well, what went wrong, how can you do the things that went wrong better, and kind of place those.
Is that the thing you've been improving the most on for the last 3 years? The way of dealing with your energy?
Yeah, I think so. Trying to find a better balance between work and, I guess, personal time can sometimes be tricky in a world where I think most of us obviously are able to turn our hobby into a job. And I think it can be very tricky to find that balance for yourself where obviously you want to get better, but there's obviously a point of diminishing return where if you're playing Overwatch for literally 16 hours a day, you're doing more harm to yourself than helping yourself. So it's important for myself to, I guess, find that signal where it says like, okay, take a break, take some time for yourself, take a long shower, watch some TV, whatever. Just recharge our battery so I can give 100% in scrims.
And with the experience, do you feel stronger today? I mean, better in your head, better in your body than when you were 20, better in game as well?
Definitely. I would say 100%. Everything combined, all the experience I've had over the years, I think Mayhem Season 1 taught me a lot for my mental fortitude. Obviously, going through so much loss was really hard on me. It's kind of hard to describe what that did to me in terms of... It quite literally broke me playing on Mayhem in terms of how it really affected me, which kind of is a weird way to think about it, but it has really made me mentally really prepared for losses. Like they really only motivate me right now. Where I think when I was a less experienced player, losses really affected me in a negative way. They are more so now fueling me and giving me more power and energy to go through and just focus on the next game.
And how did you work on that?
I think just finding a place to rationalize them. I think going into Overwatch League, there was definitely a form of ego involved. Obviously, coming off as the best EU team, coming into this global franchise league, where we obviously thought we were the best EU team, going in there and kind of just getting slapped around. That was very hard to deal with. There were definitely some very dark days after match days of reflecting of the way I had to think about myself as a player, how I thought about the game. I think those experiences have made me being able to rationalize and just realize that I cannot just be short-sighted. Single games obviously don't have the bigger impact. I just need to be the best player I can be. I need to be there for my team and legit just focus on the next game. You take the loss, that's okay. Obviously, you have to do better, recharge, go again, keep going.
You worked on that by yourself, or you talked with coaching staff, players, or other people?
I'd say it's a mix of experiences. I'd say majority of it comes from within. I do think it's like kind of getting to know yourself better, find for yourself what is important. Why do you do this job? Why do you want to win? And then obviously, I mean, throughout the years, you obviously talk to players, talk to coaches, and they help you settle that, you know. You obviously comfort each other. You obviously motivate each other. So yeah, I'd say it's a mix, but majority of it came from myself.
So you're saying that you're a better player, even a grown person, maybe thanks to the Overwatch League. So, but what are your ways today to become even more a better player? Do you want to be more complete, more consistent, have a bigger hero pool, focus on your mechanics, work on game sense, your mind? What are the priorities, work sites for you right now, LOGIX?
So I think the major parts for me as a player, obviously I've played Overwatch for a very long time. I think my biggest focus right now is just keeping up with the game. Obviously there's a lot of new players every year. The fact that I'm still in Overwatch League shows that I'm able to keep growing, keep evolving with the game. So that will always be something that I focus on. New heroes are being released, new playstyles are being developed. Always keep top of chat, keep being a top player. I obviously am able to bring a lot of experience to any team that I join. That's something that I really highly value, and it is something that I always bring to the team. And I am excited this year that we have rookies on the team that if they have any doubts, if they have any questions, that they know for a fact that they can reach out to me and I'll be able to help them with whatever. It is something that I do think I was able to help people with last year. I obviously will continue doing that this year. So evolving with the game, using my veteran experience for people. I think those are probably like the two big factors for me. I think mechanically, I'm at a level where I'm comfortable. I think I've grown as a player over and over and over every year. I've gotten better, maintain that, get even better. My hero pool is a weird thing where most teams are focused on me as a hitscan player. So I've definitely prioritized myself in just being a hitscan player. I know for a fact that I'm able to play more heroes, but throughout the Overwatch League season, I do tend to just focus on those hitscan heroes because that's how my team requires me to play. I'm not going to play heroes outside of that when I can just perfect the heroes that my team needs me to play.
You said something very interesting. I mean, you are working on keeping your love of the game. Am I true? Mm-hmm. When I'm talking with many players, soon, lastly, but also Nico or other people, when they think about Overwatch, they said that 2018 were the best period, especially because of the World Cup, because of the means and everything. The situation was different, and now they are like, it's still okay, but it's not the same it was. Do you feel the same?
Yeah, no. I definitely understand where they're coming from. I mean, if you think back so many years, like Overwatch is a completely different game. I wouldn't say that my love is less. I'd say the love is different, right? I think especially when, again, I mentioned this before, we turn our hobby into a job. And I think that line becomes very weird where obviously we play Overwatch for so many hours a day because we love it. I think at some point when people have to do it continuously for years, that love fades and it becomes more of a job. I do think it's important that people keep pulling with themselves where it's like, do I still love the game? Do I still want to do this? And I think a lot of people are retiring because they find for themselves that, hey, I'm playing this game for so long, but I don't have the same love that I used to, which is completely fair. Obviously, I'm sad to see some of the OG players go, but I also understand that for me, it's very valuable that I do still love Overwatch a lot. I wake up every day wanting to play Overwatch. I think Overwatch is the best game. I do think it's different than where it started, and I would agree that if I think about it, 2019, 2018 were simpler times. Everyone in Overwatch was worse. Game wasn't as complicated to figure out. So I think it's easy for us to say that it was less complicated and we had more fun with it, you know? I think it all, I guess, also goes hand in hand with the results you had at the time. For me personally, my best time in my career was during contenders with Misfits, with Movistar Riders. So maybe I think back of those times as a better time. But I think overall, where the game is at right now is the best point. I think if you go back to Overwatch League Season 1 VODs, you literally start laughing at how bad the players were. I think that's just a natural transition of a game, right? People are getting better and better at Overwatch. And to me, that's very exciting to see where the game ends up being with more experience.
You think that 2021 will be the best Overwatch level we've ever seen? I mean,
Yes.
because the level is increasing every year.
I think that's been true for every year, and I don't expect it to stop going for quite a few years.
So even if Overwatch 2 is not for this year, you still think that the game and the competitive scene has a bright future, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, especially with this year, a lot of the contracts expired for key players. I think the talent is more widely spread over the different teams. And again, every year, I think the competition, level of competition has gone up. That's no different this year. So I do think, especially with tournament style continuing, that's just, you know, another reason as to why this year Overwatch League is going to be more exciting than the last one.
I'm looking forward to watch the new season. Quick question, Mr. LOGIX, to finish the interview. Among the different coaches that you've worked with in OWL or contenders, which one has made you the most progress?
Soon to be KDG, but from my recent ones, I would personally say Moby Dick. He was honestly very, very impactful, and he was also one of the coaches that really made it clear to me that even though he had an easier time coaching the Korean players on our team, he was not comfortable in his own English, even though his English was perfectly fine. He really was able to convey to me in a good way everything he wanted to, and I do think I was very sad when Toronto let him go, honestly, because I do think he's one of the smartest coaches that is vastly underrated.
Who is the strongest player you've played with? The one that impressed you the most?
Probably Ivy, which may sound weird. I think Saya player would be an obvious answer, because in terms of the players I've played with, the closest player I was with was Saya player on Mayhem, because we really built off each other. We helped each other a lot in terms of him. I'm getting better at Widowmaker, him getting better at Tracer, and we really worked closely together on that. We spent hours a day practicing next to each other. He was such a motivating drive to me. But in terms of player that I was most impressed by, it definitely had to be Ivy on Toronto Defiant. He's a very quiet guy, but he is so incredibly smart, and mechanically, I actually think he's like one of the top 3 mechanical players in Overwatch. I truly think Ivy is an absolute monster. So I'm very excited to see him play on NYXL.
Yeah, Krusty was a bit sad that Ivy left Philadelphia Fusion.
Yeah.
Who is the strongest player you have played against now?
Statistically, I think it has to be Carpe. For some reason, Carpe has set so many records against me and the teams that I've played for, which is kind of weird, but it would probably have to be Carpe. I think in terms of hitscan play, he's probably one of the most all-round complete hitscan players. You know, obviously being able to play a bunch of different heroes at a very consistent level. I think the most notable thing about Carpe is that clutch factor he has, which is always really cool to see. Not as fun to play against when he clutches it out, but no, I would say that it's definitely have to be Carpe.
On which hero would you like to duel him? I mean, on Widowmaker, on Tracer, McCree, Ash,
Tracer.
On Tracer.
Absolute Tracer, 100%. I'm confident going up against any Tracer in Overwatch, no doubt.
That's the most satisfying thing when you win a Tracer duel?
Tracer 1v1, yeah, absolutely.
Better than Widow?
Yeah, because I think in terms of professional Widow play, so much is reliant on your team, where I think Tracer comes down to a lot more mechanical and just game sense. I think for me, personally, winning a Tracer 1v1 feels better than winning a Widow.
The meta is good right now for the Tracer, by the way.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely looking good in scrims right now. So I'm excited for the team together and get playing.
Do you have a very close friend in OWL?
I was definitely closer with people when everyone was in LA. I think OG was one of the few people where we started talking in ranked when he was back on GGEA, North American Contenders team. And then when he joined Overwatch League with Dallas Fuel, that was definitely one of the Overwatch League players that I was closest with. But when everyone kind of moved to their own city, that kind of faded. Obviously, not everyone was nearly as close. And my focus kind of just became on being or surrounding myself with my teammates. And that's kind of been the focus from that point on. Like, obviously, like I have friends on other teams like Fusions, Astro, that I talk with quite a bit. But I wouldn't say right now that I'm like going out of my way. I'm honestly just focused on my team and getting close with them.
It's funny you said that OG is one of your best meeting because now he's gonna play for Florida.
Yeah, that should be fun.
Yeah, I hope he's gonna exploit all his potential because we've been waiting for it like for a long time with Dallas, with Gladiators, and I hope in a full Korean roster it's gonna be better for him.
Definitely gonna be a different environment for him, but obviously I'll always root for him. I'll always cheer for him. So I'm definitely rooting for him.
LOGIX, you already are in Toronto right now. So how's the situation? We talked a bit about that. It's tough. One of my friend is actually living in Montreal right now, and he told me you can't be more than 2 people together. Most of the shops are closed. How do you live with that situation? I mean,
yeah. So right now, Toronto's. I think we're near the end of our full lockdown. So obviously earlier in January, Toronto was doing pretty bad. So there was an official full lockdown again. Everyone had to stay inside unless you had something necessary to do, like going to a doctor or whatever. Doesn't affect me personally that much. Obviously, I'm able to do my job just fine. It affects people more so than me. But I mean, obviously, I'm hoping to have that cleared up pretty soon. I know for a fact the numbers are going down. So obviously, hopefully they're able to review those numbers and change a bit of the rulings around. Because when every one of the players get here, I'm obviously looking forward to get to the practice facility and get practicing. There's nothing quite like being in the same room, feeling the energy, hanging out, during breaks, eating dinner together, eating lunch together.
Drink soju.
Drink soju together after streams, of course. But yeah, definitely. I'm definitely looking forward to Toronto doing better. And obviously, I just want the well-being of the city to do well as well.
Did you go back in Belgium during the off season?
Yeah, I did. I went back for a little bit. Obviously, I miss my family. I go back there every year. But Belgium was also kind of doing bad. Both the cities that I've lived in, it's just kind of unfortunate. So I did everything I wanted to do in Belgium, visited family, did everything in order that I had to do in terms of papers and whatnot. But I kind of had to come back to Toronto quickly because Belgium was about to go in a full lockdown and then Toronto was already doing bad. So I didn't have too much time to spend in Belgium, but the time I did spend was valuable to me. So it was a good time.
You have to choose between soju and beer.
Probably beer.
Oh, okay.
Beer.
So
I still drink beer. Yeah. Okay. I still drink beer. I'm loyal to the country. I cannot just give up beer.
All right. And to end the interview, Mr. LOGIX, do you have a message to your fans?
Yeah. Overall, thank you everyone for supporting me throughout everything. I hope you guys got to know me a little bit better. Everything I've gone through over the last few years. Very excited to be part of Toronto Defiant for at least 2 more years, maybe 3. But I'm obviously very happy to be part of Toronto Defiant. Thank you very much. I will always keep fighting until the day I lift that trophy. I will always stay fueled. And thank you all for being along my side with that. Thank you, obviously, Zroy, for the interview. It was a lot of fun. I heard a lot of good things about you, and I'm glad that I'm finally a guest of the show. But thank you all so much for supporting me. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. LOGIX, for coming to the Bazaroid. It will please the Belgians who have been asking for this interview for a long time, and it will also please all the French people who very like you. Thank you very much, and have a great season with Toronto Defiant.
Thank you very much.
Loved you from the first time you called me lame. Loved you for your wits and your wicked games. Yeah, always on my mind, always in my brain. Yeah, with you the summer came and went in a day, and now